discussion of the Netflix original series Stranger Things, episode 103, entitled Holly Jolly. I'm Adam Foxman, this is Mathis Coos, and you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit. We'd love to field any questions, comments, and concerns, and please rate us on iTunes. This is the #1 way that you can support our show, and we'd really appreciate it. What's going on, Mathis?
How's it going, man? You having a good day so far?
Yeah, not too shabby. How about you?
I'm pretty good as well. I'm excited to get going on this episode because it's a pretty amazing one overall, wouldn't you agree?
Oh my god, yeah, absolutely. Let's crank this bitch out.
Yeah, absolutely. Another quick thing just to be aware of, starting with last episode and everyone going forward, if you look at our descriptions of our podcast in iTunes or Stitcher or anywhere else, there will be hyperlinks to different memorabilia, or in this case, movies we reference, movies that are alluded to in the show, stuff of that nature. But it's just an easy way to support us with buying something you were probably already going to buy, and we get a cut, so it's no extra money out of your pocket. So we'd really appreciate that support. So, as we left off in the last episode, we had Barb attacked by that Venus flytrap looking thing that we weren't quite sure what it was, correct?
That is how it ends off, and also how this one starts up.
Yeah, so she's laying on the ground, coughing up like bile or something, and you're not really sure what is surrounding her. Everything's kind of like weird and organic looking and overgrown, and she gets up and you realize she's in a hollowed out, like empty pool with all this like growth around it, and then you get the best shot yet of the monster.
Yeah, you can, pretty clearly see it. I ended up pausing it and taking a look at it. One thing I didn't catch, this was a hollowed out pool?
Yes, hollowed out pool.
I just wrote pit, so,
yeah, you
okay,
can,
gotcha.
The giveaway, and I
ladder.
I thought it was what it was, but then you see it's your typical pool ladder she's trying to climb out of.
Gotcha. Man, I watched the episode twice and didn't catch that. Okay, well, that's interesting, because to me, I was just thinking, like, I don't know, some weird ancient place, something like that. But okay, that's actually really good to know. While this scene is playing, it's actually happening in conjunction with Steve Rapeface Harrington getting busy with Nancy.
Yeah.
So you kind of get back and forth between these two. But obviously the Barb storyline is a little more interesting right here.
Yeah, it's a pretty funny juxtaposition because she's coughs up and you're like, oh, I guess she survived, which it's kind of weird because you thought for sure she was dead already. And then she gets up, she sees the creature, she climbs out the pool ladder, and it's a pretty effective shot where she's holding onto the rails and trying to get up, but then something's pulling on her and yanking her down. And they just keep going, cutting between that and then Nancy and Steve just boning.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. And then essentially she gets pulled back down and it goes to credits.
Do you think that it was ash or snow or some other organic matter that was floating in the air?
I don't know. And so, we'll talk about this. One thing I noticed when Nancy left is the pool is fine. Because I was thinking it was their pool, because she was sitting on the diving board and maybe this creature just uses the water or something like that. But it's got to be some kind of other pool in the neighborhood. And I wonder if it's like this backyard where the front looks all nice and normal and picturesque, and in the back it's just been completely taken over by this creature and overgrown. But it looked like a different dimension.
Yeah, it did, because it seemed enclosed to me. So, I guess I could be... I guess that could be... It could be a screened-in area where the vines and stuff have overgrown it, so it feels enclosed, perhaps?
Sure. The other thing that just came to mind, I'm going to bite my tongue on and talk about later.
Okay. But this basically ends with the monster pulling her back down into the pool, screaming bloody murder, and cue the intro.
Mm-hmm. And this episode is called Chapter 3, Holly Jolly. And you get that same kind of filter in everyone. It's a nice little throwback. And then we're cut into Nancy sitting up over Steve.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's It is still nighttime outside. She tries to talk to him, but he is out cold. Gives her some unintelligible grunts as responses, and so she just ends up leaving.
Yeah, and she does seem a little, I don't know if hurt's the word, but I don't know, you get the feeling like this morning after, or, hour after, is less romantic than she had envisioned.
Yeah, she definitely does seem a little... I mean, I don't know if disappointed is the right... But yeah, maybe disappointed. Maybe like is this it? Like, this is that big moment that everybody carries over them until it actually occurs, and then it's not that big of a deal, maybe? I don't know, but she definitely does not seem like she's walking on sunshine out of there.
No, if anything, it's a walk of shame.
Yeah, but so she ends up going home, and who's up waiting for her? Mama
who
Bear.
do you think? Her mom. And her mom is pretty pissed.
She is. Asks her a bunch of questions. Nancy ends up revealing that she's wearing Steve's sweater. And the mom, I feel like, really knows what's happened here.
Yeah.
And Nancy's just not spilling the beans about it. But, I mean, she's like, whatever did happen, you can talk to me. Whatever happened, you can talk to me. So,
it's
she
funny.
just denies it over and over.
Well, yeah, she mentions they go out to eat, which, I mean, I don't know what the time frame is, so maybe that's realistic. She was supposed to be home by 10. But the mom's mad. You didn't think to call. She's prying it, trying to pry, like, emotions and talk about your feelings out of her. And she basically had the same scene last episode, but with Mike. Because she's worried about Mike not being emotional, not opening it up and sharing because of his friend Will. So there's that similar scene when they're sitting on the couch when she's like, you can talk to me. You can talk to me about anything. And no one's buying it. She has to be so upset right now.
Yeah, it's definitely true. I will say later on in the episode, we do see both kids leaning on their mother a little bit. Mm-hmm. But we'll get to that. But at this point, yeah, you're right. It's basically completely parallels the scene with Mike from last episode. And but she's basically, ends up going upstairs and the conversation's kind of over. The next day, she's walking through school, and you can tell she's looking all around, feeling super paranoid, like everybody knows what's going on. That V card's been punched, and now she is damaged goods, is how, she's looking left and right, like really feeling nervous.
Yeah, and she talks to, she goes to her locker, Steve scares her and starts talking to her and breaks the ice, but she's very uncomfortable, and even voices that it's like everyone's looking at her, and she's like, oh, I didn't tell anyone I wouldn't do that. And at this point, he is actually the most, I don't know, seemingly genuine moment from Steve at this point. I actually was warming up to him kind of, because he does seem kind of comforting, and, and it kind of ends there and just cuts off.
Oh my God, he's charming your pants off too.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, he reverses that feeling later. He can't hold on to it for long.
Yeah, that is definitely true. But yeah, he does say, you're just being paranoid. I didn't tell a soul. She says, what about Tommy and Carol? He doesn't really respond to that, but he says he had a good time. She says she did too. And so she actually does walk away from this feeling pretty good. But then she gets to class and realizes Barb's not there. Even asks another girl who also hasn't seen her. So now she's starting to realize, like, shit, something's up. She's not here today at the very least.
Yeah, she asked the friend in front of her, and she's like, shouldn't you know, because they're best friends. So, this is where she starts to worry.
Okay, and while all this is going on in the morning, over at Joyce and Jonathan's house, Jonathan wakes up in bed and he hears Crazy Pants talking in the other room, which is probably not a fair description of a mother who's looking for her son, but she's frantic, she's manic as always. She's
recently seen The Monster.
Yeah, well, yeah, now she is even more rightfully so, like, just off her rocker because of what she's seen. She's probably realizing that, like, her sanity is just, like, pretty frayed at the edges.
Sure. But of course, even though her franticness at this point seems, grounded, not only with what she's gone through, but now what she's seen, Jonathan is none the wiser to that. So he wakes up to this, goes in there. In his mind, his mom's on full crazy mode because she is just in a room.
Talking to Will, basically. She's saying, talk to me,
Yeah, she's begging these lamps to talk to her based on what she saw. And he's like, it's just lamps, Mom. And one of them, I think, flickers. And he's it's just a lighting problem. He's totally not believing anything, But I think,
she even tries to tell him about the wall, but she doesn't really articulate it well. But he's like, well, first it's the lamp, now it's the wall. Come on, Mom, get it together, dude.
Yeah. I think at one point he said, he's talking through lights. Like, it's just a crazy phrase.
But she does end up agreeing with him, but clearly only to stop him worrying. Like, she knows she's not going to sell him on this idea.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, well, I don't want to worry him, so she basically just says, you're right, okay, let me sit in here for another second. He goes off to
make breakfast.
Make breakfast. So, at this point, she's really on her own journey with this whole will thing, and continues to be so throughout the episode.
Mm-hmm. And now we get to see the boys and what's going on with them, our protagonists.
Yeah, exactly. So they're in Mike's basement. Levin's messing with the radios. Kids are kind of going over their excuses for being out late, which they've decided on. They're going to have like a late AV club meeting. That's going to be their go-to. And then they're kind of going through their supplies, which is a funny little scene.
Yeah, they're preparing to fight the Demogorgon, or at least the analogy that 11 put out there. So, like, one of the jokes that is his name, is it Dustin or Douglas?
Dustin
makes is Lucas gets out the slingshot. He's like, we're going to take out the Demogorg with a slingshot.
And he's like, it's a wrist rocket?
Yeah, it's a wrist rocket. But then he's like, look, we're doing this all wrong. 11's the real weapon. And so they go over to 11, and he's like, we've seen what she can do. And then I think he gets a Millennium Falcon replica out of the closet to try to make it fly.
And she's staring at him like, seriously, dude, are you really gonna do this?
Yeah.
And he just drops it,
Douche.
and she still like keeps that steady gaze on him, and like she's definitely not playing along.
Yeah. So the other thing that happens in the scene is, Mom's calling, they have to go to school, but 11 is told from Mike that meet us at the power lines at 3:15. She doesn't know what that is. He gets her a watch and it's like 3:15, and gives it to her.
Yes. And it was actually kind of funny, like when they're going through their supplies and stuff like that. Yeah. Lucas's was that the wrist rocket, which, kudos to him, because it at the very least could act as some sort of weapon or deterrent. But Dustin just has like trail mix and Pringles and stuff like that. You need your energy
sustenance for the fight.
Yeah. That was pretty funny. But so anyway, after they leave, what's kind of funny is they go back to this scene, and so it's just 11 there, and the scene opens on her making the Millennium Falcon float.
Yeah, she's doing what he wanted, but not being demanded to. She's just kind of having fun. But then it cuts away, or she gets distracted, and the Millennium Falcon falls, and she starts walking around the house, trying out the recliner.
Yeah, does a little channel surfing, and while she's channel surfing, she stops on a Coke commercial, and gets triggered by it, and ends up having a flashback where she's back in the facility. There's sensors all over her head monitoring, I don't know, brainwave patterns or something along those lines. And there is a Coke can on the table, and Papa is watching as she crushes it, and he ends up smiling at her. Her nose is bleeding, and so as it kind of comes back out of it, I don't know if you noticed this or if it even matters, but as her emotions are starting to kind of get away from her a little bit, the TV signal starts getting fuzzy.
Oh, I didn't know that. I simply put that she loves Coke. Oh wait, no, it's a flashback.
That was your whole note right there?
Yeah, but I knew what she did. She had the electrodes on her, the all over her head, and then she crushed the can.
Well, I mean, I feel like she loves Coke would have been a good enough way to recap that.
Yeah.
That's what people tune in for.
Well, I mean, it was the only channel she stopped on, and I was like, oh man, she must love Coke. But, abusive childhood, all that. A little darker.
Yeah. We do end up actually getting quite a few throwback scenes with her that really provide some level of enlightenment in terms of how she's sort of developed into this. Not actually how she developed into it, but how the testing was and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the next one we see, which... Can we just go ahead and talk about it?
Yeah, sure.
The next one we see is she is waiting for the kids at the power line, eventually when they go to meet up, and there's a cat behind like a little fence hissing, and she has a similar flashback, but now instead of a Coke can she's trying to crush, it is a helpless cat inside of a cage hissing at her, and all you can do is think like, don't make her do this, it's so terrible, so cruel, and Papa is still looking on, but luckily she just takes the headset off, shakes her head, and says no.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with her chutzpah, but that is not the reaction that she got from Papa. He sends his lackeys to grab her. They carry her off to her cell. They go to slam the door, and like right as it's basically closing, she uses her mind power to slam it back open, knocks one guy, straight into the wall, presumably kills him doing it. I mean, he hits with incredible force. And then the other one was awesome because she looks at him, just does like kind of like a twitch of her head to the left, and it just like snaps his neck.
Yeah, and then her father comes in, Papa, and he is just obviously incredibly impressed by the level of skill. I mean, he was trying to have her kill a cat, and here she knocks open this door and breaks some guy's neck, and he looks at her, her nose and ears are bleeding. He puts his hands on her almost like in a comforting fatherly manner, and she starts sobbing, and then he just picks her up and he walks out of there to where we don't know at this point, but it's obvious that she passed whatever tests he was interested in.
Well, and what's really fucked up is that she's obviously still seeking his approval, and when he offers that comforting, carrying her and stuff like that, she leans into his chest, but to him, the only thing that matters here is that he has successfully weaponized this little girl.
Yeah, definitely a pretty fucked up example of tough love.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm working on similar things with my children, so I can't judge too much.
True that.
But yeah, she in the present tense is still walking through the house and walks into Nancy's room, opens up the music box, is looking at pictures of Nancy as a child, which I think is kind of just like her pining for her lost childhood and the lack of normal experiences.
They also just add emotion to the scene because she didn't have a childhood like this and she's sad, but also all the pictures on the board for the most part have Barb in them, who we know at this point's probably not going to make it, so there's also that emotional weight as well.
Yeah, if she's not dead, at best case scenario, she's wherever Will is reaching out to his mom from. That's best case. So,
between like a shit sandwich and a turd sandwich.
Yeah, oh, nice. I like the little South Park reference there.
Yeah, I think it was a douchebag and a turd sandwich, but whatever.
No, nobody caught that. It's good. So the sheriff and the deputies actually go to this government facility in the next scene, and they're telling the guy at the gate that they're there for a tour. That he's shutting them down. Sheriff kind of turns off his car and says, "Listen, I have a panicked mayor. I have the media breathing down my neck. I have an upset mother on my hands. Like, just let me check this box off. Do my due diligence. I'll be here 10 minutes." Asks this guy, Patrick is his name, to see what he can swing with the top brass, and he does end up actually getting a tour of the grounds because of it.
Yeah, he's pretty charming at this point, just because he gets the straight no and goes through the circumstances.
Yeah, now we see how he gets all those ladies.
Yeah, it's like, look, just talk to your boss for me, all right? I know the boy's not in there. I'll take 10 minutes. It's a checklist, right?
Yeah. And so he ends up getting the tour, and his deputies are with them. They go to the spot where the pipe comes into the grounds, and there is a camera actually trained basically right on the spot. So they want to go see the footage of it, and they're being led by this agent guy in his suit, and he is playing along nicely, but I mean, you can really tell that he's stonewalling them a little bit, and you can especially tell after they watch the footage, there's nothing on it, then they walk back outside, and the sheriff's like, it was raining that night. Did you guys see any rain on that tape? And he literally says they're lying.
Yeah, he asked one of the guys, do you remember what happened on the 6th with the search party? He's like, oh yeah, we called it off because of a torrential downpour. He's like, yeah, you see any rain in that footage? And then the guy's like, what do you mean? What do you think's going on? He's like, don't know, but they're lying. You know, he knows something's being covered up, but he has no idea what.
Yeah, he's a pretty sharp little sheriff.
He really is. He really is. Like,
he's one of my favorite characters, actually, at this point. I do like the way that he's portraying the role.
I love him as well. He's wounded, but still stand-up guy. I like that we don't know his name.
Oh my God, we really don't know his name yet,
Just
do we?
call him Sheriff. I have no idea what his name is. I love him.
Yeah, call him Church Lady.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, but as they leave there, you and I kind of want to stick with this because there was one part I wanted to mention. As they're pulling off, the camera kind of goes towards this grate thing that's coming up, like a ventilation shaft or whatever, and kind of cuts down through there and uses that as a vehicle to get you into the next scene, which is a flurry of activity down inside of the room where this thing was being held.
The glowing amber sack.
And you know, the way that like the vine tendril things are all over the walls and the coloration of it, and then also the shit that's floating in the air, very, very much like the hollowed out pool that we were talking about.
Exactly. And at this point you see...
Oh my God, did you just say exactly?
Yeah, we're switching roles, bitch.
Nice.
So Papa is there, and you see some kind of crane thing being lowered down and drilled into the ground, but you're not sure what it's for yet. But
okay, God, I was hoping that maybe you realized something I didn't out of that, but it wasn't clear, right?
No, it's not clear until later.
Okay, I don't even recall that. In this episode?
Actually, I think it's next episode.
Oh, you son of a bitch. I actually haven't watched ahead yet, so no spoilers.
I won't spoil it. It's just weird that... It's kind of weird that they show that and don't explain it, but who knows? Anyway.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I left this episode, and when I went back and watched it, thinking, like, well, what the hell was that all about? But obviously, okay. There will be payoff at some point. But
yes.
So let's get back to the school where Nancy is sitting in the lunchroom with Steve and his little douche clowns. Mm-hmm. And Nancy asks Tommy, which is Steve's friend, if he saw Barb before he left, and he's just being a complete dickhole. You know, his girlfriend is mocking Nancy for how loud she was being during sex and stuff like that, and it kind of looks like maybe some people at other tables are looking over. Nancy looks a little uncomfortable. Yeah. Steve, of course, is just chuckling.
Well, yeah, it starts, not so bad off because she asks Tommy and he gives her a hard time, and then I think Steve says, "Come on, man, just answer the question. You see Barb?" He's like, "No, she was gone by the time I left." And then the girlfriend's like, "Well, you would have heard her left if it wasn't for all the moaning." And then they both start impersonating her, and they're making a ruckus. So even if they hadn't told other people, they're obviously all hearing this. So it's kind of her worst nightmares from earlier in the day when she was feeling self-conscious are completely and totally founded.
To play devil's advocate, if you were somebody at the next table and all of a sudden you started hearing that noise, you wouldn't have necessarily heard the part before it where they're saying that was Nancy. So just to say, like, if this doesn't lead to her spot having been blown up or something like that, I wouldn't be terribly shocked.
Sure, I just think either way she's mortified.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's definitely true. But she ends up seeing Jonathan walking by the door outside of in the hallway, mm-hmm. and he ends up going to go get some photos developed in the red room, and we know which photos they are. Wait, is it the dark room or the red room?
It's the dark room, which happens to have a red light, which won't ruin the development process.
Do I get partial credit?
Yeah, you get partial credit. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, A for effort, F in a grade. Right?
Oh my God, Jesus! I corrected myself.
But he goes in there to pull the pictures down, which are hanging from the clips, and they're obviously pretty voyeuristic and probably illegal. And there's another girl in there who gives him the look, and you get the feeling that she's feeling suspicious about Jonathan.
Definitely. Well, she comes in, gives him a nice enough greeting, but he is like awkward, tries to grab them down real quick, and you can very clearly tell by the way that the scene is done that she has seen what is on there, and because she looks at him to like get serious, like she's not smiling anymore, and he's being all weird, and then we definitely end up finding out that 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 she goes and tells Steve. But before that happens, actually, Nancy calls Barb's mom, and then almost ends up blowing their cover story of Barb staying with Nancy, Nancy staying with Barb. She kind of saves it a little bit. She says, oh, yeah, no, I meant, like, did she stop back by this morning to grab her book or something?
Yeah, and her mom, Barb's mom, I think is kind of catching on. And then randomly she just goes, oh, you know what? I forgot. She's at the library. It's like, oh, okay, have her call me.
Nailed it.
But yeah, exactly. Nailed it. Everyone's buying it. But you can tell that she's worried at this point.
Nancy is a really shitty liar, I feel like.
Yeah, she's a shitty liar. She's obviously a very, she's a goody two-shoes that's only being pushed out of her comfort zone because of Steve Rapeface Harrington, you know?
I guess her being a bad liar actually is in line with what we know of her character. It's just recently starting to come out of her shell.
Yeah. She doesn't have the best poker face at this point. So,
okay, well let's talk about what happens then when Jonathan gets confronted by Steve and all of his little buddies at Jonathan's car.
Yeah, so Jonathan's leaving, and all of a sudden the girl who we didn't know otherwise from the dark room.
I caught her name, by the way. It's Nicole.
Nicole.
I doubt that matters. But
no, yeah, I mean, unless she's just going to be a character going forward. But Steve is there. They're all by the car. And he's like, hey, Nicole showed us your work. In which case he gets very uptight, and they start making fun of him for it, because they are pretty creepy. And then Nancy comes up, kind of, worried what's going on. And, oh, here's your 15 minutes of fame, and it's the picture of her taking her top off but still in her bra from the window.
Yeah, and it's from the back, so it's not super risque. No, it is super risque, but it's not exactly... I mean, it's not like amateur porn or anything like that, but it's still bad. And the way that this ends up happening is because Steve's little buddy grabs the backpack, hands it to Steve. They pull out all the photos, and yeah, they're not good. So... Steve's saying something like, perverts can't help themselves. It's hardwired into them, so, you got to take away their toys. So he ends up grabbing the camera, and then Jonathan's like, please, no, not the camera. And then Steve's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, fake olive branch.
Oh, my God. And then he goes to hand it to him and then just drops it, and it smashes into a bunch of pieces.
Yeah, Nancy, you can tell, is even though she's obviously not pleased with the whole thing, she's also not pleased with how Steve dealt with it, She's really not on anybody's side in this. You can definitely tell that she is upset with Jonathan. Like, he clearly violated her privacy and her trust, but she also doesn't like seeing, the older brother of a kid who is missing, that she is familiar with their whole family. She doesn't like to see him being humiliated and tortured like this, but again, he completely violated her. Yeah, I mean, she's obviously just like, this very good girl that's getting out of her comfort zone, and she's obviously not comfortable dealing with all this testosterone, even though it represents itself in various ways.
Now, the last thing that she ends up seeing before she walks off, because they go ambling off, and she looks down and sees a picture of Barb sitting on the diving board on the ground. She ends up picking it up along with some of the other torn up pictures, and then runs to catch up with her buddies.
Yes, that's true, which we saw, and that's basically the last scene you see her. I mean, blood drips into the pool, and then she's taken. So you're wondering if there's something in this photo that maybe shows a little more, but not that you could see from that scene.
Agreed. The other thing that's happening at school during the day is Mike and his little buddies are searching for rocks during recess, and kind of talking about the powers Eleven has and if that makes her a superhero. And so it's it's fun, it's lighthearted and things.
Yeah. Do you think she got her powers by birth like the X-Men, or do you think she acquired them like the Green Lantern?
Yeah. Yeah. I actually really like the discussion, but then they're kind of mocking. Lucas specifically is mocking Mike for how much he loves 11.
Or L, as he calls her now.
Yes.
Because they're in close terms.
The bullies come up and start mocking them, saying that Will is dead and he was probably killed by some other queer.
Yeah, the bullies are definitely getting a lot douchier than the first episode.
when it was all good and playful, and now they're like making fun of them for their friend being dead.
Yeah, pretty fucked up and dark.
Pretty
right?
dark, exactly.
And then it ends unsatisfyingly because they push Mike, and Mike trips and hits his chin on a rock, and Lucas kind of breaks the the tension in the room's like, hey, that'll do good for the monster. So they find like a few more rocks for the slingshot. But otherwise, you're like, my God, can't they just pay it forward to those stupid bullies?
Yeah, as of right now, they
Haley Joel Osment style
their comeuppance. Yeah. So they've got their monster killing rock, and that's pretty much it for the scene. Not a whole lot to it, but they do end up getting their rock, I guess. So
they end up getting their rocks off, right?
Oh my God! Thanks, Dad.
I didn't have my rim shot queued up, unfortunately. But anyway, the other thing...
You could spend 5 minutes scrambling through your pockets to get it to happen again.
The other thing we've been seeing throughout the show is... Joyce took it a little bit further than just the lamps. When Jonathan woke up, she now has Christmas lights put up throughout the house in order to obviously communicate with Will. And Karen, which is Mike's mom, decides to come over and bring over a casserole, and she has her little girl with her, and she asks them in, and obviously things aren't right,
No, yeah, and I guess we didn't really talk about the scene where she's at the general store with all the lights.
Well, I think it actually comes after this, right? Because she runs out.
That you're exactly okay. Yeah, you're right. She puts up all the lights that she has around the house, and then Karen's mom. I'm sorry, Mike's mom, Karen, comes over to the house, and it's funny because Mike's mom, Karen, is all put together nicely, and
very much so, yeah.
Quite the juxtaposition with how poor Joyce looks, like hair like a bird's nest.
Yeah, very disheveled.
Yes, yeah, unkempt. And so Karen is there with Holly, has a casserole. Joyce invites her in, and they sit there and they chat in the kitchen for a little bit, and she's like kind of trying to explain the whole lights thing and the electricity so she doesn't sound crazy, but Mike's mom is being pretty cool about it. She's saying, listen, it's totally understandable, what you're going through right now. She seems like a nice lady, by the way, don't you think?
Yeah, Karen's a very nice lady. And I think more than anything, Karen really would love if someone just opened the fuck up to her, because she's like, you can talk to me. Just talk to me, please, talk to me.
Yeah, wow, I didn't think about that, but she is constantly, to borrow from the phrase you used earlier, extending an olive branch, trying to put a shoulder out there for somebody to cry on, and everybody's rebuffing her and basically lying to her all the time.
It's true, and I don't know the father, Karen's husband's name, but I feel like he's just he's not fulfilling her needs.
Yeah, it seems like it's certainly not conversationally.
Yeah, for sure.
But so while they're chatting there, the lights start flickering on, and little baby Holly sees the lights, and of course it's ooh, a shiny thing. Ends up walking down the hallway following the lights, which are kind of making a trail into Will's room. So she walks in there. There are lights everywhere, and she's standing kind of in the middle of it. The lights are going off all around her. There's like this very pleasant music playing, kind of like it has like this ethereal sort of sound. And then all of a sudden the music stops and the lights stop, and she starts walking over towards the wall, the same spot that we've seen before, and then she's like right up next to the wall, and you're like, oh my God, seriously, what's going to happen to this poor... Like, I was almost watching it from between my fingers. I was so worried
and immediately, being that it's named Holly Jolly as an episode, I'm thinking that she is going to have
some central part in it. Yes. Yeah. It felt very ominous. I was scared.
And so then the monster starts to flex out of the wall, just like last episode, and right as it starts to happen, she's picked up by Karen, or maybe it's Joyce. And
I think Joyce, and then she kind of sets her on the other side.
You're not supposed to be in here, and it's an awkward moment. The monster stops, so it doesn't keep coming out of the wall.
Yeah, but she ends up saying, like, "What did you see? Did you?" And she says, did you see something?" Holly
She said
says
yes.
yes.
Yeah.
And then so she's totally panicking. She's like, "What did you see? What did you see?" And then she's like, and then Mike's mom's like, "Joyce, relax." And she's like, "Thank you for the casserole, but you gotta go."
Yeah, get out of here. I need to keep trying to communicate. And then eventually she runs out of Christmas lights when she's trying to do the entirety of the interior. And she goes back to the general store and gets another advance on Christmas lights, not near Christmas. And you can tell the guy is just like, what the fuck is going on?
And
Just ring it up, Donald.
Yeah. She just doesn't want to hear or have his judgment on her right now.
Yeah, not with what she's going through. And
but go ahead.
I can't remember when this transition starts. We'll go ahead and get into it, but essentially the lights pay off, right?
They do end up paying off, but let's actually hold off on that for a little bit longer, because I want to really delve into the whole lights thing as we're leading up to what happens at the end with the spelling out.
Okay.
Yeah, but what's happening at this point is the sheriffs and the deputies pull up to the library and they're having a pretty funny little scene. So, like, he walks in and the librarian's there, and she immediately tells him off for basically, having sex with her and then never calling.
Yeah. You think he just waltz in here and, just gives the whole spiel, but she obviously hates him. And he has the best response ever. Like, oh, I'm sorry, Marissa. If you like, we can go out next week.
It's so awkward and hilarious.
And then he cracks a huge smile afterwards. Yeah, he waits a second or two.
The deputy looks over at him like, is this guy for fucking real right now?
Yeah, it's so funny. But then they go over and he essentially wants microfiche or newspaper on this little small film, and then he gives the librarian a task. He's like, I'll take the Times, you take the New Yorker or whatever paper it is. And she walks away kind of scoffing that he gave her an assignment.
Yeah, basically she gives him like the fuck off kind of look, and then ends up walking off. But so they're looking for anything that has to do with Hawkins National Laboratory, and then kind of cue the montage of them
newspaper read montage.
Montage. Okay. I mean, I guess we'll know. Let's wait to find out the reveal on the stuff that they see, because that ends up leading straight into the last scene, actually. But let's cut off to the part where the kids walk up to 11 after school and they go riding off on their bikes. We can kind of skip past I'm sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? Because she had like where it goes back in time with the cat.
Oh yeah, she has a little flashback where she sees the cat, which we already talked about. But then the boys show up. It is 315, and they're ready to go on their adventure. And she's going to lead them to Will, as per their discussion, and the fact that she's shown that with the walkie and everything. And so they begin to go on that trip. They have Pringles, they have everything else. They're ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Wrist rockets, yep.
Mm-hmm.
And 11 and Mike and Dustin and I'm drawing a blank. What's the other kid's name?
Lucas.
I was going to call him Lloyd. So the four of them are walking, but 11 and Mike are kind of walking up ahead of them a little bit. She asks, why did they hurt you? Basically referring to the thing on his chin. He tries to lie to her. She sees right through it, says that friends don't lie to each other, and he basically says that he didn't want her to think less of him, and she says she understands. It's kind of a nice little scene.
Yeah, he tells her it's the mouth breathers. She's like, mouth breathers? Dumb people. Idiots or whatever.
I use the term mouth breathers all the time, and you would be amazed at how unfamiliar people are with that as being a way of describing dumb people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't immediately equate it with dumb people, but I remember there's this one guy who used to shop at the comic store I worked at, who, we just called mouth breather because he walked around with his mouth just open, breathing.
All the time?
Yeah, just like a very obvious agape mouth as his default, and just breathing. It reminded me of Beavis or Butthead, but just without the talking in between, just I'm sure he had like
no.
a deviated septum or something, and I shouldn't be, bringing this up, but it's the only person I ever saw that I was like, that's where the term comes from.
Yeah, that's some horrifying imagery, man. I'm sorry you had to live through that.
Sorry, man. I'm sorry he had to live through that.
Oh my God, first world problems.
True.
So going back to Nancy here, she's in the hall with Steve and his little buddies. The game's going to be starting up soon, and she just isn't really having all of their little banter back and forth, and she makes up an excuse to go leave, and Steve is like wondering what he did wrong, but really I think what it is that she wants to find out like what in God's name is going on with Barb right now. She walks to Barb's car, which is still parked in the same place that they left it, a block or two from Steve's house.
Yeah.
And she's just yelling her name. Nothing's happening. She's clearly getting worried now. Walks over to Steve's house, goes into the backyard, is yelling Barb's name all over the backyard. Here's a little rustling in the woods, so she walks in a little ways, maybe like 30 feet or so, and then stops, and the camera's like slowly spinning around her, and then you hear something run by. You catch a glimpse of it, and it's making a growling sound.
Yeah, and she turns around, she immediately is startled, and just runs the opposite way, kind of abandoning the whole search, and later describes it to people as something without a face.
Wait, when did she say that?
I think towards the end. I have it somewhere in here.
I feel like you're next episoding me, you son of a bitch.
I don't think so.
Okay, maybe. Well, we'll get to that here in a little bit then. But Nancy ends up going to her house crying, and her mom asks her what's the matter, and Nancy says it's Barb. Something happened, something terrible. And this is the scene where she finally ends up crying to her mother, and, finally, her poor mother Karen actually gets a moment where, like, somebody takes her up on the invite of being the shoulder to cry on.
Yeah, because she's literally just sobbing.
Yeah, so while this is going on, Joyce is at her house smoking. The dog starts barking to get her attention, and lights start flashing, pointing her towards a shelf. And she goes over to try to figure out what's going on, what's he pointing her towards. She holds a strand of lights in her hand, and says, and she's kind of like kneeled down inside of this little cabinet thing and says, "Are you here?" The ball of lights glows real bright in her hand. So
and she goes like frantic. She gets very emotional, and then
yes,
it's like, hey, okay, light up once for yes and twice for no. Are you alive? And yes. Are you safe? No. And
yeah, two glows.
Yeah,
and there's like this little Discord music that starts playing behind her too, like to make it like really sinister seeming.
So then she starts asking more advanced questions like, where are you? But you immediately realize that the blinking system isn't going to work. So then it cuts to her painting on the wall, and you get the idea that she's making an alphabet so that the lights can correspond and maybe start spelling things out.
Yes, and it comes back around to that towards the end of the episode. But first, Sheriff is talking to the deputy. They're still in the library, and they're talking about someone in an art. Actually, they kind of gloss over this a little bit, but talking about someone in one of these articles who sounds a little cuckoo. Terry is her name, and she claimed that her kid was taken by this government facility and used with LSD mind control experiments, which sounds about right, actually. But of course, it sounds crazy to just somebody reading this in an article.
Yeah, he ties the thread between Dr. Brenner, I think it is, who...
Martin Brenner.
Yeah, who's in these articles, who's also works for the Department of Energy.
And is also Papa.
Also happens to be Papa. So, he has these people he's doing experiments on, and then you have the other articles kind of saying he abducted kids. And then he also brings up the fact that they're all wearing hospital gowns, confirms what you were saying last episode, that piece of dirty cloth was Eleven's hospital gown. So they're starting to see more of a correlation, starting to maybe understand the cover-up aspect and why they were shown the doctored footage.
A little bit. I mean, because the deputy's still not quite buying it, but Sheriff says maybe it was the wrong place at the wrong time.
So at this point he even says, I'm not, thinking it's full-on conspiracy theory, but maybe Will just saw something he wasn't supposed to.
And while the deputy isn't totally buying it, I mean, the sheriff isn't like completely committed to this theory, but it's something for them to start working on. And it is interesting because we actually finally get the name Dr. Martin Brenner, that is the agent, which is Papa. And so we know that he runs this Hawkins, what is it? Hawkins Laboratory? That doesn't sound right.
I think it's Hawkins Laboratory, Department of Energy.
Okay, nailed it.
I think that's right.
But anyway, they end up actually getting paged and go running out of the library, and the lights go on in their car, and they just go tearing down what I'm assuming is like Main Street or something like that.
And at this point,
something's happening.
Yeah, and at this point, my mind is like, oh, it must be Barb's body.
That's what I was thinking as well, is this must have something to do with Barb. But before we end up getting to the reveal at the end of the episode, we see the kids are walking their bike through the woods, and 11 has led them to Will's house, and she says hiding. And the kids think like she just like...
They're all so pissed off.
This is not right. Like let's go get the police now. This is a worthless, like, why did we do this? And even Mike starts seeming a little dubious at this point.
And meanwhile, inside the house, they're cutting to Joyce. And Joyce is asking, where are you, Will? In which case he spells right here. And she's seemingly perplexed. And so you're kind of getting this mix between Will says he's right here, 11 says he's right here, but where is he? Yeah,
that is the mystery here, is that in actuality, he is not here, right? Like, he's definitely not, like, actually in the walls. Like, there's some portal to it. He's not actually within the house, right? Isn't that what we think?
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking if he's communicating through lights, maybe it's his soul. I was also thinking that with 11 and her powers, maybe he's in the testing facility and he's found a way to kind of use powers and reach out. But it's also like he's a pretty quick learner. But you don't 100% know what to think. But as your mind is kind of pondering these different things and trying to figure out what it could be and speculating, the cop cars all run by the kids in front of Joyce's house, and the kids decide to follow suit.
They do, but she in there gets one scary ass fucking moment, which is where she's not understanding the whole right here thing, but then all of a sudden it starts lighting up again. It's R-U-N, and then the last one is red too, so it's like even more ominous. Mm-hmm. And then all the lights start blinking furiously, and the wall starts pushing out, and the wall actually rips. Like, the fabric of this thing pushing out rips, and all of a sudden this horrifying creature of the nightmares comes pouring out of the wall, basically, and she goes tearing out of the house.
And you finally get to see it. You saw it pretty well earlier with Barb. But now I'm like, oh, okay, that's the Venus flytrap, because it looks like the face.
The mouth of it, for sure.
Yeah, it's just these, flaps kind of folded back into itself on a round head, and that's where, that's what we saw was attacking Barb. But it's a pretty intimidating creature, and you now kind of see the entire silhouette. So you're like, okay, the little Slender Man thing I saw in the first episode is still this, but you're also, at least I was thinking, is there multiple monsters? Just because it's here, and then there's one with Barb, and what's going on? Did multiple things escape? You're not really sure.
Yeah, and we really don't know. At this point, it kind of seems like they all, I don't know, sort of appear as being the same thing, but we truly don't know. But she goes tearing off outside of the house, and while that's happening, the kids are racing to try to figure out where the sheriff's going, and it's the reservoir. And they get down there, and the sheriff gets down there, and as they're watching, a body is being pulled up out of the reservoir, and music's playing. Actually, you noticed what the song was.
Well, I noticed the lyrics, and it was "Heroes" from David Bowie, but it wasn't that version. And then once the singing kind of got a little louder, you could tell it's Peter Gabriel covering him. And you also see the kind of heart-wrenching reveal where you can actually see the body, and you see the red parka sleeveless vest, and you realize it's Will's body. And at the meantime, he's right here, and you're getting all these conflicting messages. But obviously, the kids have lost hope at this point because they're onlooking from behind an ambulance.
I mean, and they're even saying like that's Will. Like,
yeah,
Will is dead, and it's a really sad with the swelling music. I didn't particularly like the song that was playing. To me, it wasn't the best choice. I will say, maybe it was actually not that bad, because I did end up, possibly shedding a tear or two during this scene, because it's really sad, and with the swelling music too, it's like just extra poignant. The kids are realizing their friend's dead. Joyce, while she's running down the road, ends up running into Jonathan, who's driving up, and he gets out, and they're hugging each other tightly, and it's just, and Mike ends up riding his bike off while the song's playing, and gets home and walks into the house, and was his mom in there with Nancy and Barb's mom?
I didn't know. I thought it was just her, the dad, and then Nancy, but maybe Barb's mom was in there too. But he comes in sobbing, and she gets another person to console. But at this point, she's probably wishing she kept her mouth shut.
Yeah. Yep.
Because it's just right. Like a heartbreaking day,
It was a really, just a sad and just desperate moment, really, for the viewer watching, and obviously for everybody experiencing it in the show. And that's how the episode ends, on this cliffhanger of you not wanting to believe that this is Will, particularly with everything that was happening in conjunction with this scene, I guess, with Joyce. I mean, because obviously some part of him still exists to be passing along those messages.
Yeah, so this is one of those episodes that leaves you with just as many more questions as answers, because it doesn't really tie up the plot line of where's Will. It just ties up.
But it was a powerful episode. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I've loved every single episode. There's not an episode yet of the three that I just didn't like. And I mean, overall, I think all of them were great. I don't think there's been one that even felt slow to me yet.
No, not at all. I mean, you're getting the character building throughout the whole thing, but intermittently you're getting really good horror and action scenes, and there's just a lot going on, a lot to take in.
Yeah, everything is really well done. They do really well with pacing. A lot of the scenes we dissected and talked about, are done piecemeal throughout, so you never feel like you're just watching Joyce go crazy, and
you never bog down.
Yeah, but you don't. But and I think it's effective when you're juggling so many different emotions, because if you just watch Joyce for 20 minutes of an episode, or even 15 minutes straight, it would feel pretty bleak and depressing, right?
It would.
But they mix it up with the fun the kids are having. With Eleven and her powers and like that whole new discovery, they mix it up with the sheriff's investigation piece, which is just kind of fun and intriguing. So they do a good job of mixing enough up to where you feel a lot, but you never feel
and the flashbacks as well.
Yeah, which that also is pretty heavy content. So it's nice to pepper it through flashbacks, as opposed to, here's 20 minutes of a girl's life being ruined.
And then of course, just being a total dude bro that I am, of course, my favorite scenes are always the scenes with the monster.
Yeah, I absolutely love the monster scenes. I mean, my favorite storylines are the stuff going on with Eleven and her interaction with the boys in the flashbacks, and then anything to do with the monster. But I appreciate what's going on with Jonathan, the other stuff. None of it seems forced or wasted or unnecessary. I just have my favorite parts.
Yeah, that's my favorite part too. Would be definitely the monster stuff first, like I said. But I do honestly, I really, at this point, I can't think of any plot that is going on that I'm not into at all. I guess Jonathan's would, if I had to pick one, would be my least favorite. But I find him intriguing. I mean, he's a weird little dude.
Yeah, he is a weird little dude, and I'm curious where it'll go and where each character will develop and what they'll do going forward. But each episode adds enough intrigue to where I don't ever feel like I know where it's going.
Yeah, agreed. But Okay, we should be recording probably not till the end of this week, the next episode, which will be episode 4. But for right now, you ready to put a bow on this bitch?
You know it. We'll see you next time, little buddies.